It's the transfer story that won't go away at the moment, isn't it?
Do they need both? Is the question, I suppose. Nowadays.
Yeah, are West Ham, though, in a position to be demanding 60 million
Think
for
they
a
would
player
have
who
won, can't they?
scored, 5 goals last season?
Just for the fun of it, to see him in a black and white shirt.
Yeah.
Oh man, how much would I enjoy that?
Unbelievable.
Hello and welcome to Transfers Exposed. I'm the Sun's head of sports, Shaun, Custis, and alongside me, my deputy, Dean Scoggins. We're with you with the hottest transfer news direct from the Sun newsroom. And we're here every Tuesday and Thursday until the transfer window slams shut, because it always slams, on September the 1st. And Dean, as I step in for Will Pugh, I'm putting you on the spot about the hot transfer topics today.
Yep, we've got an upgrade. Will Pugh, eventually. We've got the
Absolutely.
gaffer. We've got the gaffer instead. So I'm sure Will will be the first in the comments to pull us up on any mistakes that we make today.
Well, talking of upgrades, are Manchester United getting one in Bryan Mbeumo? We feature on the back of the Sun today. Show B the money. Brentford hanging in there. They're determined that they're going to get top dollar for Mbeumo and not happy with Manchester United bid so far.
Yeah, it's the transfer story that won't go away at the moment, isn't it? So again, Jack Ross's story, just to update everyone. Brentford wants 65 million quid. Man United clearly in for him, although they are flirting elsewhere with others, which we'll come on to in a minute. But Brentford, as you say, the chief executive Phil Giles saying if he leaves, it'll be on our terms, which basically means, as we say, show B the money. And obviously they want him as a replacement for Rasmus Højlund, but it feels like that Man United tax. Or the, when it's Manchester United, you can get the money out of them, especially when other clubs are interested in him as well.
A couple of things here. So it's 55 million the bid plus add-ons, which gets you around 62.5. The belief is they're holding out for around 65. Doesn't sound like there's much to go before they get their man. It's one of those where Brentford are saying, oh, he could stay here. But actually, we all know in the end he's going to go, isn't it?
It's interesting when a Premier League club quibbles over a couple of million quid, I suppose. But he's on 20 goals last year, Cameroonian international. I mean, we believe the wage is somewhere around about 40 to 45 grand a week, which quadruple at Manchester United probably. And then obviously you talk about things at Manchester United on image rights, making more money. So look, I know I got loads of grief in the comments over the last couple of weeks because my Tottenham hat was on and I really wanted him to go to Tottenham instead of Man United, but I still have got a B in my bonnet about it's good that, right? About him not going to Tottenham and in choosing Man United, right? So what do you do in that scenario? Man United or a Champions League club?
Well, we have been discussing about the fact that actually your image rights at Manchester United are way better than they would be at Tottenham. You get seen globally, properly around the world, and everybody identifies with you wherever you're a
You get a midweek off because you're not playing in the Champions League.
I'm sorry, but Manchester United is bigger than Spurs, as we know. And the other thing about Mbeumo is, you've just mentioned his goals record, which is phenomenal for a bloke who's not actually an out-and-out striker.
Absolutely, yeah. Likely to play off the right for United in that sort of Amorim 3-4-3. And obviously they've already done the deal for Cunha as well. And I don't think they're going to stop there, are they, United? Because we mentioned Ollie Watkins as well. This is also part of Jack's story on the back page this morning. And we mentioned that obviously the Brentford have rejected the 2 bids, but they're also looking at potentially Ollie Watkins. Now, Watkins is 29, another former Brentford forward. What about that then? Cunha, Mbeumo and Watkins as a front three.
Yeah, I know. It could be pretty good. I agree with you. But do they need both? Is the question, I suppose, because which is the more important? You'd probably rather have Watkins before Mbeumo because they need that out and out front man.
Yeah, I suppose it depends if, obviously United need to offload Rasmus Højlund or Garnacho, Rashford, Sancho to boost the bank balances before they get to that point. And look, I mean, how much would Ollie Watkins be? We've got a contract that expires in 2028. Obviously, 17 goals last season, 14 assists as well. Ollie Watkins, which is remarkable. Obviously, he wants to be in the England reckoning as well in a World Cup year. So, if you offload Højlund, what happens with Xerxes, if you manage to sell Rashford and Garnacho and then you end up a front three with all those three, surely that's an upgrade for United, right, on what they've got at the moment.
But I think Watkins has gone slightly out of the England conversation. Now we're talking about the likes of Delap and that are the more likely for next summer's World Cup. And I can imagine, even though Man United fans shouldn't be getting sniffy because they're in no position to be, them turning their nose up slightly at Ollie Watkins, saying, is he really Man United level?
Wow.
And what is Man United level these days?
I think he's a fabulous player, Watkins, and I think Unai Emery sort of took him to another level. There was the whole thing with John Duran and all of that at Villa, but whether it was first choice or second choice, and then there was obviously when they brought in Rashford that Watkins dipped a little bit, but I would say Watkins is a massive upgrade on the ones that United.
Yeah, but I think you've just put the evidence up for why Man United fans might turn their nose up at Watkins, which is that when everybody was available to Aston Villa who they had, he was not the starter.
Yeah, true. But then Ruben Amorim, one-touch finisher, man in the box.
Oh yeah,
I'd like him.
I mean, I think he is a fabulous finisher. Well, he is a fabulous finisher, but he also misses quite a lot as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So, but you've got to be in there to get them. So Højlund's not even in there, as far as I can see.
Yeah. So if United are going to do deals like that, where do we stand on Rashford? Where do we stand on Garnacho? And where do we stand on Sancho? I mean,
they've all got to go.
But your boys Newcastle have been linked with Rashford. Do you fancy being?
No, not really. I don't think that's an upgrade for Newcastle. I don't think that's an area that we need to improve on. I don't think that Rashford's the right man for the job. You are particularly gutted though about Mbeumo not going to Spurs.
I am, yeah.
Because the thing about him is he's very consistent, isn't he?
Absolutely.
He is always a 7 out of 10 man every game.
And the goals. And if he's scoring that many goals in a Brentford side, with all, obviously they finished above Spurs in the table last year, but
what are you saying?
Well, I'm saying that the ceiling at Spurs is higher than the ceiling is at Brentford, I think. And Mbeumo, I think, is another one of those players who I don't think we've seen the best of yet. Now he's going to go to Man United. I hope we don't see the best of him.
But do you feel he's selling himself short in that he hasn't chosen a club in the Champions League?
I really do. Yeah, I really do. I think even if United were in Europe, then there'd be no conversation. And this is not a Spurs thing. This is not me being on my height. No, it's not. He's a player I want, but it's not it's not one that I think he should be thinking about Spurs over Man United if it was a level playing field. But this season, it's not a level playing field because Tottenham are in the Champions League and Man United aren't even in European competition. He's effectively saying to everybody, I will take Manchester United back into that top level along with Cunha, which fair enough. But we could be in a scenario in 12 months' time where Man United aren't in Europe again and he's lost his chance to then go to a club in the Champions League.
But the point of signing him is that they will be in Europe again, won't it? He's probably gambling on the fact, look, it's only one season. They all are, really, the new signings at United. They will be back into Europe. I agree, it's quite a bit of a distance to make up to get back into Europe. But I'm sure they are thinking they'll be back there in 1 year's time.
And confident then United will get this across the line, right? If we're talking a couple of million quid.
The only saga I can think where I thought it would happen and didn't was last season when Gahey was going all the way along and it was Steve Parish, absolutely, it's 70 million, it's 70 million, 70 million. And I thought we'd eventually get over the line there with Newcastle as it was. And they never got to 70 million, so they didn't sell. I think this is a slightly different story with them.
Yeah, and also yesterday, what we've got to remember is that the chief executive sat there with the new manager, Keith Andrews. He's not exactly going to sit there and go, we're going to wave our striker out the door, is he? Absolutely. So I think there was a bit of gameplay there. But yeah, I think we expect that to be done end of this week. Now the PSR window is officially open.
It's open. When does it slam shut?
Well, no, yeah, but July the 1st means now that clubs can move things into their accounts this year. So I think after all the chatter, there'll be plenty of activity this week, and United will kick off that little merry-go-round.
Not just a transfer expert, a financial expert as well.
You swerved me off Tottenham on that last one, so I'm going to go back to Tottenham on this one. And story by Tom Barkley in FC in our Football Confidential column this morning. Spurs are lining up their first West Ham player in over a decade by targeting Mohammed Kudus. Now, this one is intriguing. Okay, so if we're saying Spurs aren't going to get Mbeumo, We've got another attacking wide player, maybe someone who prefers to play on the left or has done at West Ham. There's a valuation from West Ham apparently of somewhere in the region of £60 million, which I think if you look at his talent is fair enough. But you look at his output last season, I'm not quite sure it was there. He arrived in 2023 from Ajax for £35 million. And there's this sort of unofficial transfer embargo that's going on here between the two clubs that if Tottenham are going to lift it, he'll be the first player since who to move from West Ham to Tottenham.
Oh, Scott Parker.
Now, we did talk about it before.
We did talk about that before.
But yeah, that's amazing. Since 2011, he could be the first player to do that. But basically, this is Spurs. We've talked about Eberechi Eze before this, being another attacking player to Thomas Frank's new look Spurs. If they're not going to get Mbeumo, where does Kudus fit in that, do you think?
Well, first of all, I think he's a really good player. I've seen him quite a few times. Very strong, good on the ball. You can't shrug him off it. The only thing I find with him is he's not as consistent as, say, Mbeumo, who I said is a 7 out of 10 player for me all the time. Kudus, 3 games out of 5. I think, and sometimes goes missing. But maybe in a better side, if we would consider Spurs to be a better side than West Ham, he will flourish. I do like the way he plays. There's no doubt about it. But 60 million is the new 30 million, isn't it?
It does feel that way, doesn't it?
It's starting to feel that way, that it's not a mega gamble if you spend 60 million. You've got to be spending 100 or 120 to be really buying top players these days. But these are in the realms of everybody's 60 million, aren't they, nowadays?
Yeah, are West Ham, though, in a position to be demanding 60 million for a player who scored, 5 goals last season? You know, look, he's got lots of international caps, 40-odd international caps. That looks like does better for the international side with 12 goals. Chelsea also linked as well, but I mean...
Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea have got, 11 or 12 wingers now. Do they need another one? But, you know, West Ham, obviously they're not going to sell Jarrod Bowen, we would assume, over the summer. They've got Ferguson and they've got the German striker as well. I've forgotten his name. Füllkrug, very good, thank you. But what does that mean then? Is it time to move on from someone like Mohammed Kudus, who clearly hasn't quite done it in a West Ham shirt?
Well, I disagree slightly. I think he has done it in a West Ham shirt. It's just I'm saying the consistency's not been quite there. I always laugh at this argument that who are West Ham to demand £60 million? It's like Newcastle. How dare they hold out, for claiming he's over 100 million? You can ask for what you want.
Well, I suppose that's what Brentford have done with Mbeumo as well. Yeah,
and Kudus, if Bowen's not the man to go, is their most saleable asset if they feel like they need the money. I think it'd be a big blow for them to lose him, personally. As I've said, I do think he needs to be more consistent, but hey, I like him as a player, and I'm sure he would be a fine addition to the squad, as they say at Tottenham. And they will need more better, stronger players for the assault on Europe this season.
Absolutely, they will. They definitely need more strength in depth, and I think maybe the point with Kudus is with West Ham is that, given, without us going into too many details about Paquetá, that obviously his saleability has gone out of the window because of the betting scandal. Was almost set to join Manchester City before that happened, and now if Graham Potter is going to get some money to make a squad of what he wants to make of it, then perhaps selling someone for 50-60 million pounds of this level, he can then invest money in players that are probably his players that a manager likes to do.
I don't think you'd want to lose a player like that, personally. I think he's a really good player for West Ham, but as I say,
the knock-on effects of that, the knock-on effects of that at Spurs is obviously that Spurs do also have numbers in that front three, and in signing Matis Tel this year, there's Brennan Johnson there. There's Kulusevski injured till gone Christmas. Solanke's obviously the number one striker. So Richarlison is probably the one who would make way if, and you know me very well that I'm a big fan of Richarlison.
I don't quite understand it. I really don't. To me, he just spends his time moaning, groaning, rolling around, doesn't score very many goals for Spurs. I was slightly shocked when I was doing my research to discover he'd scored 20 goals in 50 games for Brazil. Because I couldn't quite understand why he played for Brazil.
Well, we all remember
that
the bicycle kick.
Yeah,
we all remember
absolutely.
the bicycle kick. I would argue you don't score, well, you don't play 50 games for Brazil or score 20 goals for Brazil unless you're a very good player. It's the injury record that's the problem. It's
Do
the
you
injury
honestly
record.
think he's been good for Spurs? Honestly.
I do, yeah, I do. And the fans love him, and obviously me being one of them. But he's one of those players, and it feels a little bit like, when you've got a player that was, 50 odd million pounds when he came in. I don't think we ever knew exactly what the deal was because it was a staged deal with Everton, dependent on appearances and goals, and he's obviously not played as many games as he should have done. But he impacts games. He's one of those subs where if the game's going flat, he comes on and he makes something happen. We all know the players who are good subs and bad subs. There's some players you think, if he's not starting, you may as well not bring him on because he doesn't do anything when he comes on. Richarlison, whether it's sticking a centre-half up in the air and making the crowd go wild, getting an assist. I mean, the assist in the semi-finals of the Europa League.
We all remember that.
Absolutely, yeah. But he was excellent in the final as well. I know that Spurs, park the bus or Ange Wall as it's now known. But
What happened to him?
Oh yeah, but look, he will be one. He's 28 years old. We've talked about it in Sunsport this morning. He will be allowed to leave if somebody pays the money for him. It could be Turkey, it could be Saudi Arabia. Galatasaray are the ones that are probably leading the race at the moment, and probably around about £20 million, we believe. So even though you don't think he's that good, 20 million's all right, isn't it, for a player like him?
I would have thought you think that's not enough, and also you don't understand why your new manager is letting him go. You just put a whole defence for why he should stay at Spurs.
No, a defence of why I liked him. But I think that if you're in the market for Kudus, Eberechi Eze, and were in the market for Mbeumo until Man United ruined the party, then I think that he's the one that, again, a saleable asset that rather than selling one of the younger players who you could still get more out of, maybe Richarlison's time at Spurs is up.
And you mentioned Eberechi Eze, who is being linked with a possible return, actually, to Arsenal because he was an academy kid at Arsenal.
Yeah. He should remember that they snubbed him before. So let's remember that, Eberechi. Come on, let's not just rule out Spurs yet.
He's one of those who, I mean, he's great on the ball, isn't he? He excites you, but does he do enough? Even though in flashes it's really exciting, but is he consistent across a game enough for a team like Arsenal? I mean, when he's played for England in flashes, wow! Yeah. But does he do enough throughout the game?
I think it's a really valid question, and when I've got my nerd hat on, when you know that I'm talking tactics, and I've already been doing my research ahead of the new season around people like Eze, wherever he goes, because I watched him at the Tottenham Stadium for Palace in the build-up. It was the week before the cup final last year, and I hadn't seen him live for about 6 months or so, and I couldn't believe how quick he was. I think it's really underestimated how fast he is because he's that sort of dribbler, and he does check back, he does beat people with a bit of skill. So I'm not buying it from a lot of Arsenal fans that he's not the right fit for their left winger to replace Martinelli because he's not quick enough. He might not be the right fit because he goes inside and he runs in that Declan Rice channel, and Arteta likes rigid players in rigid places, but you can't tell me he's not an upgrade on Gabriel Martinelli. I mean, if we're talking 60, 65 million pounds, again, Palace, I think it's 68. It's quite a complicated deal because they owe money to previous clubs that have got sell-on clauses and whatever. His contract goes until next year or a year and a half from, no, so it's 2 years from now, sorry. But again, 14 goals, 11 assists.
Cup hero.
Cup hero. And I feel bad for Palace because it's almost like they're being picked apart. It's like Brentford, Bournemouth and Palace are getting completely picked by the Lions at the top of the table. But look, he is, for me, he is one of, if not the most exciting players in the Premier League to watch. And I think other than perhaps Liverpool, he just slots straight into every single side. He's that good.
We mentioned in last Friday, Sunsport mentioned Arsenal's man Andrea Berta had made contact with Eze's representatives, and he's also presumably quite busy trying to sort out whether they can ever get Sesko, Gyökeres. where do you think Arsenal are with those two?
Well, it's now Ekitike as well, apparently. I mean, that's good. Let's move on to number 3. So
So have they given up on Sesko and Gyökeres?
yeah, I mean, I think that Arsenal are playing the field, I think it's fair to say, with the strikers. And these, the 3 that they're talking about, so Gyökeres, Sesko, and now Ekitike. I love a palindromic name, so Ekitike, another one for the Premier League, the nerds like me. But so let's just go through him. So 23 years old, 22 goals last year, and again, I watched him score a rather good one for Frankfurt against Spurs. But he sort of fits that profile that Arsenal were looking for, right? Number 9, same as Sesko and Gyökeres, scored goals in European leagues already, same as those two. And it's almost like Berta is doing what Arsenal sporting directors haven't done in the past. They've put all their eggs in one basket before and fallen short.
Yeah.
And then all the fans go crazy and think, well, why weren't we in for him, or him? This time, it seems they're doing their due diligence. They know which strikers they can look at. They know which market they're shopping in. And I know people are getting frustrated, and we did take the mickey last week about Arsenal buying another midfielder, but it looks like they're making a decision between these 3.
But Ekitike has long been linked with moves to the Premier League, going way back to when he was 18, 19-year-old, went to Paris Saint-Germain, and it didn't work out, and ended up at Eintracht Frankfurt. So it might be that this is a gamble if Arsenal go for this, because he's already been proved that at the top club it didn't work for him. And he's still not being capped by France at full level. Yeah, and he scored a few goals for the under-21s. Is it 5 goals for the 21s, as we were looking at before? But the one thing that I'm sort of is nagging about these 3 for me that Arsenal are looking at the moment is not proven Premier League quality, right? Obviously score goals in Europe. They all seem, what's the best word? Volatile. The 3 of them are sort of... You like that, though? You like Richarlison?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's where I think it's like the excitement level is great, because it could be that that's the bit that Arsenal were missing in that title race, in that one thing I think about Arsenal last season is you knew what they were going to do. That everywhere they played, every move they did, all the corner routines, all of everything like that, you knew what was coming from Arsenal. That doesn't mean you can stop it, because they've got outstanding players. You know what Odegaard's going to do. You know what Saka's going to do. You know what Declan Rice is going to do. So you can make a plan for that. I think the 3 strikers that they're looking at are that sort of X-factor type player. I'm not pretending they're going to score 25 goals a season, but if they score, someone like Ekitike gets 15 but scores that goal against Man City, against Liverpool, to get them across the line in that big game when you need that little edge. And maybe that's a better word than volatile, edgy. Those 3 strikers are edgy. They're not going to sit there and be like take for granted and sit there and just deal with tap-ins and be a run-of-the-mill striker. They've all got an ego. We've got 2 who are, well, we've got one in Gyökeres who is telling the club he's not going to play for them anymore. Got one in Sesko who's following Arsenal on their Instagram accounts and almost doing that. And we've got Ekitike who's making no secret of the fact that he's better than the Bundesliga.
They are only going to sign one, though.
Yes, yeah, they're only going to sign one. But as I say, I think Andrea Berta is going about things in the right way, in that, all 3 obviously want to come to the Premier League. Let's do the best deal. And then obviously, hopefully, from an Arsenal perspective anyway, that Mikel Arteta gets the final say and gets the one he wants. But
one they're not bothering to go after is Tammy Abraham, who is actually an England centre forward, and he's close to making a 12.9 million move from Roma to Besiktas. One of those players, I think, when he was younger, we were waiting for an explosion for him to move on to the next level, to maybe be England's centre forward. Was around the edges of it, but never quite happened, did it? No, it's a bit bizarre, Tammy Abraham, isn't it? It's a shame, because he's only 27.
Yeah, and it's sort of like Turkey's becoming the sort of, the end home for Premier League footballers who don't quite make it. But and that's unfair, isn't it? They are top class footballers, but you know what I mean. Don't quite make it in the Premier League. Another one, just in our tidbits from Football Confidential, is Fulham looking at the Genk and Nigeria striker Tolu Arakadare, sorry if I've got that wrong.
I'm sure you're familiar with him, Dean.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I haven't watched many videos about that. And then Crystal Palace also looking at Middlesbrough midfielder Hayden Hackney, one of the stars of the England under-21s, even though he was 23, which is a bit bizarre, but stars of one of the successful under-21 camps, and also Dutch defender Rav van der Berg. Now, it will not surprise you to know I have heard of him, and I have watched a bit of him. Only because he was linked to Tottenham last year.
Was he?
That was about it.
Who's he play for?
Not sure.
Oh,
not sure.
Right.
But
we're looking at him.
Yeah, we're looking at him. Yeah.
But my fun story of the day is these reports in Argentina that Lionel Messi wants regular high-level games before the 2026 World Cup and may fancy a move to the Premier League to get those games.
I bet he does, yeah. Obviously, he's not going to go back to Barcelona because it seems that the relationship with Laporta and Barcelona was burned at the time. And not, let's be honest, Barcelona struggled to get any new signings registered until they changed the rules at every Spanish bank. So I don't think they can do that for Messi. But can anybody afford him? Well, what about your boys?
I don't know.
The Saudi estate.
It is ridiculous when he's 38 years old, but just for the fun of it, to see him in a black and white shirt. Oh, man, how much would I enjoy that?
Unbelievable.
It would be amazing. And there still will be some brilliance in those legs, and I feel he wants to keep going as long as Ronaldo's keeping going. Inter Miami was an understandable move in a way, but a bit bizarre. It was a bit sad to see the way they were just brushed aside by PSG. It's not a top-ranked team coming to the Premier League, but he's not going to want to sign for a team that's mid-table or lower mid-table, like Man United.
Man United, he might have Champions League ambitions. Yeah.
But that's a difficult one. I mean, he was long linked with Manchester City, of course.
I remember the story. Didn't you write that story? Yeah, it's a brilliant story.
Well, it was better than linked. It was definitely on. There was talks, a lot of talks at the time, and Pep, I think, really wanted to go for it. Messi didn't quite fancy it. I think in the end he decided it was a little bit cold in Manchester, didn't he? A bit wet.
It isn't today. That's
so he thought, no, I don't. There must be a little part of Messi which thinks, Premier League.
But then how much? How much? It's 600, 700,000 pounds a week, or is that not enough?
It linked to your image rights, which we mentioned earlier on, and which he has them to himself and can do what he will. And you've got to remember, with somebody like Messi, fans follow him. A lot of youngsters nowadays,
as you will know,
your boys as well, don't necessarily support a team. They support a player. So he brings with him all those South American fans as well over to, Newcastle United. I'm just surmising. Who knows?
But here's a if we're having the fun line at the end, let's speculate about it. If you were going to, so let's just say £600,000 a week because he's going to take a massive pay cut to come and do it, which seems ridiculous that it's a pay cut to £600,000 a week. But let's say it was £600,000 a week, right? So that's a 1 year deal. So what's that? £30 million in wages.
Yeah.
So let's say it's a £50 million package, right? For 1 year. Let's just say, right? So that's the money that we're talking about for someone like Mbeumo, Eze, someone like that. Would you, as a football fan, take 1 year of Messi instead of a 3 or 4 year deal of one of those guys?
I think I would, for the fun of it. I know it doesn't fit into the we're building for the future model. And
doesn't fit into PSR, that's for sure.
And I always had this thing with Newcastle whereby I'd rather win the League Cup and get relegated than finish fifth in the league, because it was a exciting thing to win a cup.
Yeah.
And how exciting would it be?
Well, that's what football's about, right? And I'm totally on with you on the cup, because now I can say, Tottenham have won a European Cup and or a European trophy. Sorry, so I don't want to annoy fans who wanted to go for the Champions League. But when in 15, 20 years' time, are you going to remember finishing 8th in the league with a mid-ranking winger like Kudus, good player, but mid-ranking, playing on the side? Or would you go for 1 year and remember that you always remember you got to see Leo Messi?
Messi for the tune. You've persuaded me, Dean. Bring it on. I'm sure he'll be flying over next week.
Yeah.
And we'll hear all about that on Transfers Exposed. That was it for us for today, brought to you by Sun Sport. Don't forget, hit subscribe, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And you can watch the show on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Just make sure you like, comment and subscribe to stay up to date. I'm Shaun Custis. He's Dean Scoggins. Transfers Exposed will be back on Thursday.